RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. This is your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions on diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros, competitions. It is hard to believe, but in just 1 week from today, Johnny Styles and I will be meeting up in Las Vegas to kick off the coverage of the 2017 Olympia weekend. Dave Palumbo will be joining us the next day in the morning to bring you coverage first of the Olympia press conference. Right now on RxMuscle.com and the RxMuscle YouTube channel, loads of content, interviews, an episode of Versus, which is soon going up, Iron Debate, which is going to be going up tomorrow, coverage of the Iron Road to the Olympia, brought to you by Yamamoto Nutrition and Pro10. As we bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, two big things because we're already getting a lot of questions about it. One, your plans on keeping yourself and your family safe this upcoming Hurricane Irma, as it approaches Florida. And then, of course, a week from now, we'll be in Las Vegas covering the Olympia.
We hope to be in Vegas a week from now in Vegas covering the Olympia, assuming the hurricane doesn't wipe us out over here. The way it's looking now, I don't think we're going to be getting a Category 5 here, which would have been devastating, but it's still going to be probably pretty bad. I am not evacuating. I don't know. Where would I go? What am I going to do? I'm going to put my son in the car with my wife. We're going to drive 100 hours, to the north. I don't know. There's no place to go. So we're staying here. Our house is luckily, it's the whole 2 floors of it's poured cement. We should be fine, assuming a tree doesn't go, flying through our window or something like that. We should be able to muster the storm, so to speak. Look, you're in Florida. It's hurricanes here. I thought I escaped them when I left New York, but I really went into the heart of darkness in a sense. And, you get these crazy storms every once in a while, but, they've been making a million different projections where this thing is going. And we don't know what part of Florida it's going to hit. We're going to obviously get something, but the magnitude of what we're going to get is unknown. But I will promise you I will be reporting from the heart of the storm, especially I think we're going to probably get it here Monday morning. So I'll have Johnny, assuming Johnny can get to my house, I'll have him filming me outside with the it'll be like Gilligan's Island when they have those crazy storms out there. If any of you guys remember from that show, that's really dating me. And hopefully everything will be intact and the airport will still be open when you guys have to leave on Wednesday. And then, of course, I'll be leaving early Thursday morning. Chris Aceto will be there Monday. So a lot of coverage obviously planned for this upcoming Olympia weekend.
We are going to be releasing an interview we just did with Josh Lenardowitz. Obviously, a very emotional tale for Josh Lenardowitz. The connection with Dallas McCarver, being the first on the scene. Obviously, when Dallas McCarver unfortunately passed away a couple of weeks ago. This is his first interview with any media outlet beyond his own social media. Dave, you want to just touch on that real quick? A very powerful conversation you just had with Josh.
Yeah, it was a couple of minutes ago we filmed it. We just finished up, and I thought it was very good. I thought it was powerful. I thought it was emotional. I thought it was, I found closure in the whole Dallas situation talking to these guys because Matt, was his coach. They had just gotten back together. Was very, very tight with him, of course. Josh was living with him. Think about the trauma that Josh must have gone through to find this guy. And then, Josh knew CPR and worked on him for over an hour, which is exhausting. So he had his hands on this guy, and I can't even fathom what was going through his mind and how it felt. And he's a tough guy, and both of them, obviously have been through a lot. They went to his funeral. And they gave us the whole rehash of what happened. And I think, to me, hearing it from him, his mouth, as I asked the questions, made it more real. And I think I found healing in it. I did. And I think everyone out there who's a fan of Dallas McCarver will find the same.
So again, that interview is going to be available shortly on RxMuscle.com and the YouTube channel. Let's get to the questions. First, old school Matt. Dave, is it safe for diabetics to be on a ketogenic diet? If so, what's your advice for a diabetic to be on a ketogenic diet?
It's the best diet for a diabetic because let's face it, diabetics don't produce any insulin, okay? Especially type 1s. I'm assuming that's what he's asking. And even type 2s, they produce less insulin. So if you're eating a very, very, very low carb diet, your insulin requirements are way, way down. So if you're a type 2 where you produce some insulin but not enough, now you might produce enough because you're not eating carbs. Your carb load is much lower. If you're a type 1 diabetic, you'll have to take a lot less insulin because you're not, because you're not consuming carbs. Remember, your body only needs to release insulin when you're either eating carbs or you're producing glucose in the bloodstream via gluconeogenesis in the liver, which is always happening, okay? So a ketogenic diet is ideal for someone who is a diabetic or is a type 2, because of the fact that the insulin requirements are much lower. When your insulin requirements are lower, it's easier to keep control of your blood sugar.
Qasim Al-Sentry, what's the longest you could stay on T3? I have 2 shows, one in 4 weeks and the other in 8 weeks after the first show. How would you run T3 then?
You could take T3 for 6 months if you wanted to. I mean, the truth of the matter is that the thyroid hormone works on a simple feedback loop. When there's exogenous T3 in the picture, also a drug known as Cytomel is a version of T3. Your body's thyroid gland, or I should say your pituitary gland, will shut down TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone, and your thyroid gland will stop producing T4, or slow it down depending on how much you're taking. When you remove that T3 and you take away that exogenous source that you're consuming, now your pituitary gland will turn back on TSH because it will sense very low T3 levels, and your body will start producing it again. So it's not one of these glands that really needs a long time to kick back on. You can turn it on and off pretty easily. It's a simple feedback loop. I have virtually never seen problems. I knew someone who was on T3 for like 3 years, and they came to me, they're like, what should I do? I don't know how to get off of it. And I weaned them off of it over 4 weeks, and their levels came back fine. Now there's always that one person, or you hear of, that their thyroid didn't turn back on. They went to the doctor, they got tested, and their T3 and TSH levels were suppressed. And the truth of the matter is they probably were suppressed before they ever took the thyroid. And a lot of people tell me that I've talked to and said, how did you feel before you took the T3? Terrible. When I took the T3, I felt great. Well, they were probably hypothyroid the whole time and didn't know it. So once again, I don't really see a big deal with taking T3. I think it's a relatively safe drug, assuming you don't do too much of it and you wean yourself off of it properly. So to answer your question, 4, 8, 10 weeks is not a big deal. I have people who usually run it 16 to 18 weeks and they don't have problems. So I think you're fine.
Morgan Mac Bodybuilding, I don't use insulin regularly. Should I use 5 to 10 IU of Humalog before my weekly cheat meal? I'm currently in contest prep.
Mm-hmm. If you're in contest prep, and I'm assuming you're eating a relatively either moderate to low carb diet, having a cheat meal where you're eating a lot of carbs, will spike your own natural insulin levels. I don't know why you would want to take Humalog or an exogenous source, unless, of course, you were a type 1 or type 2 diabetic that maybe, if you were type 2, you don't produce enough insulin. Or maybe you run high blood sugars. If that's the case, you might really need to address that. But just as a regular person who's having a cheat meal, there's absolutely no reason to take any exogenous insulin.
Good one here from Thomas Stewart. Now, for those of you unaware, we have something on Sundays which we call RX Classic, where we reprise some of the older videos that we've done in the past, be it bodybuilding or not bodybuilding related. Thomas Stewart wants to know if you have any old workout videos of yourself that you could put up on the YouTube channel.
You know what the truth is? I did a training video called Reconstruction of a Bodybuilder. It was kind of like a B-movie / training thing. And I put up, all those clips are actually on the RxMuscle YouTube channel if you search them out. It's Matt Duvall and I were training together. As far as like legitimate training stuff, we didn't have videos back then when I was in, no one started taking videos till the mid-2000s. I retired in 2004. And I really, never really shot any videos of myself. There might be a couple floating around, I don't know. But, Mitsuru Okabe shot a video after the USA Championships of me out in Venice, California at World Gym there. And it was supposed to be called the Battle of the Super Heavyweights. I've never seen the footage. It was a leg training session where I was actually talking to the camera as I was training legs. And I always wanted to see it. I never saw it. I know Mitsuru went back to Japan. A couple people talked to him. I've always been trying to send word out to him to, I'll buy the footage off him. I just want the footage. so I could put it up on the YouTube channel. I think people would get a kick out of it nowadays. I'd love to see what it looks like. It's probably the only real training video that was shot of me, other than the video of the movie I did. So it would be nice if anyone out there knows Mitsuru or talks to him, see if you can find that video footage. I'd love to see it.
Steve Wolford, Olympia-related question. Dave, what do you think of day off weigh-ins for the 212 Olympia? Carbing to 220 negates the weight class.
I didn't really understand the question.
No, what do you think of I guess, the weigh-ins being the day off the competition? He goes on to say that carbing to, say, 220 negates the weight class, in his opinion. I
agree. I think if you have to make a weight, you should weigh in the morning of the contest, and you compete that day. Because if you weigh in a day or two before, you're really not 212 on stage. So I agree with that 100%. I am totally in support of weighing the guys in the day of the competition.
Kenneth Torres, your thoughts on delayed muscle soreness? Many people say it is completely necessary for muscle growth.
Delayed muscle soreness usually means that you're not recovering well from your training. In other words, it's one thing to be sore right after you do a workout, and that was a tough workout. That's normal. But if your soreness doesn't come for 2 days after, it means that it's delayed, and that's why they call it delayed muscle soreness, obviously. That usually means that you're not recovering properly, or you're overtraining. So you don't want to be getting that on a regular basis. If you are, something's not right in terms of your nutrition. You're not getting enough sleep. Maybe you're overtraining too much, too many sets. That should not be occurring on a regular basis.
Joey Mascaro, Dave, does sodium intake stay high in the off-season, or do you recommend altering it after a contest prep? I was adding sea salt to all 5 meals during contest prep and wondering if this should remain the same in the off-season.
Assuming that your body is healthy and your kidneys are functioning properly, the more salt you eat, the more you will pee out of your body, because there's a certain sodium balance your body wants. So actually restricting sodium is not a good thing, because that usually raises the hormone aldosterone in your body, which then makes you very salt sensitive. So then if you do eat a big salty meal, you get all bloated because your body retains the salt. When you eat normal to high amounts of sodium all the time, especially if you're sweating a lot, which is a good idea, your aldosterone levels will be very low, and you'll never retain salt. Now, obviously, never retain water. Now, obviously, if you're taking a lot of gear, okay, and especially aromatizing gear that converts to estrogen, that estrogen can cause you to be a little more sodium sensitive, just like women get around certain times of their period. So, restricting sodium during that time might solve the problem, it might not. I don't like to create a deficiency of anything in the body, so I don't restrict anything. Think about how much salt you lose in your sweat. You need to replace that. You cannot walk around on a low sodium diet. You'll be weaker, you won't grow as well, and you won't feel as strong in the gym, that's for sure.
Gareth Davies wants a shout out. He's going to be watching the show while prepping for the Arnolds on his stepper mill. Your opinion, Dave, on guys eating Cocoa Pops, bagels, sorbet, Pop-Tarts, etc. after workout and junk to make up their calories because they find it easier than eating clean?
You are what you eat. You ever hear that expression? If you eat crap, you're crap, okay? Having, a little bit of a snack here and there, having a little bit of junk food a couple times a week is not a big deal, but I wouldn't be eating junk food every single day. Simple sugars are just not conducive to building muscle, It's just garbage. It's garbage, and, as bodybuilders, we want to put high efficiency fuel into our body. That's not to say you can't have an ice cream, you can't have a muffin or a couple cookies here and there. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you shouldn't be making that a mainstay of your diet, okay? People laugh because I used to tell them I would eat McDonald's every single day for 8 years straight. But I wasn't drinking like shakes, milkshakes and stuff like that and having all kinds of junk there. I was having red meat essentially. I was eating, 6 patty buns, with 2 pieces of cheese essentially, 2 triple cheeseburgers. I was having a fry, sure, but how many grams of carbs are really in those? There was probably way more fat in the fries than carbs. And, I had an apple pie, sometimes. So it wasn't a lot of carbs, especially for me with my caloric requirements. So, you got to take it for what it is. If you go into Dunkin' Donuts and you're eating a dozen donuts every day, that's not a smart thing to do. Most people will get very fat from that.
Frank Semino, Dave, why is it that myostatin inhibitors like follistatin in humans don't work? What is actually causing the inhibition of action? Humans and animals are obviously different from one another, but it seems strange that we haven't figured this out yet, given its possible application to diseased populations.
Think about it. They haven't figured it out in animals either. I mean, there are some animals that are genetically myostatin negative, meaning they don't produce myostatin. We've seen the bulls, those Belgian blue bulls that are all hypermuscular. There are certain humans that are born without the myostatin gene. We see the babies; they're very muscular when they're born. But taking follistatin, whether you're an animal or human, just doesn't seem to work because it seems to be like one of these things that needs to be pumped into the body 24 hours a day. So let's say your body's not expressing the myostatin gene. Okay, then you're going to obviously grow much more easily. Studies that were done on bodybuilders back in the 90s claimed that Flex Wheeler has no myostatin. May or may not be true. Maybe that's why he grows so easily. Having said that, if there was something we could take that would consistently 24 hours a day block myostatin, then theoretically, it could unlock some muscle growth. But we don't have these substances. Follistatin is not that. It doesn't last very long in the body. So we have not come up with a solution to inhibiting myostatin on a regular basis. I mentioned on, I think it was the last Ask Dave show, that I had talked to someone who had contacted me from Europe that told me that they've created these, I guess you could say, adenoviruses that have been modified with these cleaving, systems, enzyme cleaving systems that will cleave out your myostatin gene in every cell of your body, and then you don't have myostatin. Now, whether that's true or not, I haven't seen it in action, but it seems exciting that if it can be done safely.
Go to Ross Quinlan. How common are eating disorders among bodybuilders? I have a fast metabolism that requires me to force feed in order to gain weight. I find my appetite is always low, and my relationship with food has suffered the last few years because of it. Any advice?
Look, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Eating is not a pleasure with bodybuilding, it's a job. Okay, if you want to grow big and you want to put on muscle mass, you have to get these meals down. You got to get these shakes down. When I would get to a point where I just couldn't eat anymore, I would just drink more shakes. I never ever missed a meal or feeding. Okay, whether I had to suck down a shake because I couldn't get the food down, or I had to blend the food up and drink it down, I got that meal down. I made myself eat because it was that important for me to grow. I didn't care how I felt. I didn't care if I was nauseous or not. I knew it needed to go down. Now, when I first was getting started into the whole field of bodybuilding, I didn't have a lot of money. So I would make, and I've told this story before, I would make tuna and rice, and I would literally make almost a whole box of rice, minute rice, and I would mix in like 3 or 4 cans of tuna. I'd put some soy sauce on it, maybe a little mustard, mix it in, and I'd have this huge Tupperware, and I would take it to work with me if I was training people or working at the gym, whatever I was doing at the time. And I would just sit there all day and eat that thing. And I knew by the end of the day that whole tub needed to be complete. It needed to be finished off. And I did it. And you know what? And then I remember after doing this for like 6 months, I was so sick of tuna and rice that in the gym I was working at the time, they had like a little restaurant. And like once I would treat myself. And believe me, I did not have money to do this. So I really was trying to conserve. Once, like maybe one meal out of the whole day, I would go and they would make grilled chicken there and some baked potatoes, and I would smother it with ketchup just because I couldn't get it down. It was so dry, and it actually tasted pretty good because it was something different that I wasn't eating all day. So I would go through these phases where I'd eat the same meal almost all day long, and then when I couldn't take it anymore, I'd switch to something else. And that's just what you got to do. If you want to be the best at something, you can't make excuses why you can't accomplish it.
Let's go to Alexis Camino. Dave, good one here. Your advice for balancing bodybuilding full-time, pursuing your goals of becoming a pro and having to work a full-time job 9 hours a day outside the fitness industry.
It's tough, but you know what? The advantage you have is that you are making a living and can afford bodybuilding, whereas most bodybuilders don't have that luxury. You're making money for your food, for your training, your gym memberships, your supplements, your coaching, your contest prep, your contest applications, and most guys are like, they're begging and stealing for that. So it is an advantage. You have to just very carefully schedule your life. And assuming you become a great bodybuilder, you might eventually be able to give up that job. I was just talking to Josh Lenartowicz, and up until just this past year, he was working a full-time job, and it was hard because the other Olympia guys were sitting on their butt, during the day relaxing when he was having to work. So Ronnie Coleman was a cop for a majority of his career. I mean, that's a full-time job. He had to schedule his life. And if bodybuilding is important enough to you, you will find a way to get to the gym, do your workouts, you will find a way to get your meals in, and maybe you won't get quite as much sleep as you want, but you'll get it done and you'll actually be able to afford what you're doing. So you have to take things in stages. Obviously, when it gets to a certain point where you could turn bodybuilding into a full-time job, if that's what happens, then all that suffering and all that planning, all the sacrifice will have paid off.
Dom's 2014. Dave, in your opinion, is Classic Physique overtaking the Men's Open Mr. Olympia?
Maybe in terms of excitement, you could say. I think the Classic Physique Olympia this year is one of the most exciting divisions because we really don't know who's going to win. Danny Hester is the returning champion, but we have so many new people. Guys like Chris Bumstead in the lineup now. Guys that are returning like Breon Ansley that are on fire. Arash Rabar, who was controversially second last year. We have what's his name, Sadiq Hadzovic, who made his debut last year, but we haven't seen him all year. I'm sure he's bringing a terrific look to the stage. It is exciting, but I still think that the mass monsters, the hyper muscular guys, will never ever take a backseat to any other division in the show. That's always the most exciting.
You might want to be a little sensitive how you want to answer this one. Jacked and Juicy. Dave, do you think the gym is a good place to meet women? If yes, how would you approach?
I don't think maybe in the history of going to the gym, I don't know if I've ever actually gone on a date with anyone from the gym because, that I met there. Maybe once, or something like that. When I went to the gym, I was in workout mode. And I always went to hardcore gyms. It wasn't like a social scene. So it's hard for me to say that. But, now that I go to more poshy gyms because I don't care and I see women there, I think a lot of guys go to these gyms because it's a social hour. The problem is you can't really approach a woman who's working out, in a social setting there and try to ask her out because it looks like the biggest, most contrived pickup of all time. Probably the best idea is that, if you go to a gym on a regular basis and you see someone you like, you're probably going to see them there, 3 to 5 times a week at the same time, and the best thing is just become friends with them, And if there is an attraction there, then something more can develop. But the longer you become friendly and see them at the gym and make eye contact and that kind of stuff, I think that's a better way to do it. And the advantage of that is that you're going to see them there all the time. And it doesn't look like you're trying to just pick them up. Once you become friendly with people, it takes away that air of that you're a stalker or something like that. Because if you go right up to someone, that's just not my style, going right up. You go right up to someone, either the girl is going to like it or she's going to think you're a creep and you just blew it. So I personally would just kind of be more, I guess you could say, suave about the whole thing and just try to develop a friendship first. And then if it becomes more than that, then great. Other guys that I know out there who are pickup artists might say, no, you go right up, you say this and that and this to the girl. And yeah, maybe that's the way. My style was never, I was always kind of a more reserved type of style.
Pre-Harubi, Dave, what is better for a cheat meal, high fat or high carb? I read that high fat does nothing to reset leptin levels.
Well, leptin is not the problem. It's T3 levels. Remember, thyroid hormone is what controls the metabolism. Leptin just controls your appetite. No one cares about the appetite. You're trying to reset your thyroid levels because in your body we produce a hormone from the thyroid gland called T4 or thyroxine. T4 is inactive. In the circulation it gets converted to the active form T3. This T4 to T3 conversion is very dependent upon insulin. So if insulin levels are very low in the body because you're eating a low-carb diet, every day, then the T4 to T3 conversion over the course of weeks and weeks and weeks of doing this will slow down. However, if you have a higher carb, meal once a week, I call it a cheat meal, other people call it a refeed meal, you will stimulate insulin release and that insulin elevation will keep T4 to T3 conversion running at maximal, I guess you can say, amounts. And that's the reason for the cheat meal. Not only does that, it also reglycogenates the muscle, especially if you're on a low carb diet. You're probably walking around very glycogen depleted. Plus, it's something it gives you something to look forward to once a week. So it has multiple reasons for it, leptin being probably the least reason, the lowest reason.
Killer Dave, what are your thoughts on protein quality when counting protein? Should you only count protein from animal and dairy sources?
Yeah, that's usually what I do. I don't count the protein that's in nuts you're eating or anything like that, the indirect sources. I usually just count the direct sources of protein I'm eating, whether it be, I'm knocking over cups all over the place here, whether it be chicken, fish, meats, whole eggs, whey protein. I wouldn't figure the protein in my rice or anything like that. I think it's negligible.
Animal Viper, Dave, wondering who you would like to see beat Phil Heath, which I don't see that being possible happening, but who would you like to see stop Phil Heath's reign?
Well, I got to admit, I'm a big Ramy fan for sure. I love the freakiness of his physique. I think the roundness of his muscle bellies. I mean, obviously, I think we all want to see Big Ramy show up looking like Ronnie Coleman on stage and just decimate the field. The sentimental guy that I'd love to see do it would be Cedric McMillan, because I think he's just got a classic physique. I think the acceptance speech, if he ever won the Olympia, would be mind-boggling. He probably wouldn't be the best Mr. Olympia because he's so reserved, and he's but maybe if he won the Olympia, he would come out of his shell and he would start doing more interviews and stuff like that. But Big Ramy would be the freak pick, of course. And then you have to always say Dexter Jackson, because Dexter won the Olympia in 2008. He's 48 years old now. I mean, that would be maybe the greatest, victory of all time. So those three guys, I guess, are the sentimental favorites. Big Ramy being really the future of the sport, if he can bring the level of conditioning that we've all been waiting to see over the last 3 or 4 years.
Let's go to Big Ant 1026. Dave, when you were at your best competing on national level, going for your pro card, how did you break your body parts up when training, and what nutritional program did you follow for both off-season and pre-content? Probably loaded questions. See if you can get the Cliff Notes version of this.
Yeah, I always, and I've said this before on past shows, I did an 8-day split back when I was competing. I would do one body part each day, and I would actually split my arms up. I would do biceps and forearms on one day, which obviously was a short day, and I would do triceps and calves on another day. I would take 2 days off out of that 8 days. So I was training 6 days out of 8 days, and each body part got trained once during that 8 days. To me, I needed more rest. My body had a very fast metabolism. I hit the muscle hard, not with a ton of sets, but with a lot of intensity and high weight. And then I rested a lot, and that seemed to work well for me. And think about it, I was training 6 days every 8 days, so that's a lot of days to train. Granted, 2 of those days were a little short because they were only bicep day and forearms one day, and then triceps and calves. But I still was in the gym, so to me that worked for my body. I think for a regular guy, I think a 7-day split is good. 5 days on, 2 days off. Usually I would do 3 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off, and split it up like that. It's training your entire day your entire body over 7 days. As far as my diet went, it would change. Off season it was obviously more carbohydrates. Pre-contest I went lower. I didn't really need to do ketogenic diets for long periods of time. Earlier in my career I did do it when I was holding some body fat. Towards the last 4 years of my bodybuilding career, I really didn't have much body fat on me. I would only diet for like 4 to 6 weeks before a show. But I would cut my carbs back to 150, 200 grams a day, which for me was really low. Probably they were more around the 150 mark. I would always have my cheat meal in place, and I would pre-contest eat 6 to 7 times a day. I like to do shakes. I would do like 3 shakes, 4 meals. And then off season, I would try to get 8 meals in at the end of my career. When I was growing, I would eat 12 times a day. I would have 6 shakes and 6 meals, or sometimes 8 shakes and 4 meals if I just couldn't get the food down. But that's me. That was my metabolism. I had a very, very fast metabolism, and I had to eat an enormous amount of food, which probably didn't help my waistline. There is something to the truth of the fact that when you eat a lot of food and high volume foods, you're stretching out your gut. I mean, you can't help but do it. And I didn't really discover fiber till later in my career. So had I been drinking a fiber supplement like my Fiberlize twice a day while I was in the prime of my career, having 12 feedings a day, it might have helped my waistline because I could have eliminated waste from my body more efficiently.
The 1_100. I'm eating plain chicken breast, eggs, and protein shakes all day, every day. I feel great in the gym too. Shouldn't I be suffering right now eating all this?
Hey, some people could eat. You know, when I would come off a contest prep and I would start my off season, the eating was so easy I couldn't get enough food in. It wasn't until like 3 months after that I would start having problems eating. And I found that when I would clean out and go off drugs, I always ate better. So probably the drugs had some sort of a toxic effect and would slow down my hunger a little bit. But there's nothing wrong with it. Run with it. If your body is hungry and you're eating and you're growing, that's the best case scenario you could possibly have. It means your body is processing food and eliminating waste optimally.
All about the iron. What are some ways to improve insulin sensitivity besides going keto?
Fish oil, one of the best ways. If you take my Omega-Lyze formula from Species Nutrition, not only will the 3 grams of fish oil in there sensitize your insulin receptors, we have something called omega-7 palmitoleic acid. And while that's not an essential fat, it's one of the best insulin sensitizers out there. Not only does it sensitize your receptors to insulin, it also lowers total body inflammation, C-reactive protein levels. So if you're not taking Omega-Lyze, I highly advise you try it. 3 pills twice a day with food. Not only are you going to get all your essential fatty acids in, you're going to become more insulin sensitive and your C-reactive protein levels will be lower. So from a health perspective, you can't get much better than that.
I'm going to take one more. I'm going to combine these 2 questions. They're fairly relevant, from Mark Eves and Igor Pitak. During a prep, what would you say are ideal macros for protein in your opinion? 1.5 per pound of body weight example, 2 per pound. Don't want to lose muscle, but carbs are as low as I can get them without going full keto. If I need, I'll be upping cardio fats at 100. Please help. All right. Then Igor Patak, how do you decide if your client needs higher fat intake, presuming that they're not on keto?
Yeah, assuming you're getting enough essential fats and enough fat in your diet, which to me is anywhere from 0.5 gram to 3/4 gram per pound that you weigh. So if you're a 200-pound guy, you want to be eating about 100 to 125 grams of fat per day spread out over your meals. Assuming you're doing that, protein at 1 to 1.5 grams per pound is plenty. 1.5 grams per pound is probably ideal. So if you're a 200-pound guy, you want to get about 300 grams of protein per day. You want to get about 125 grams of fat. And then anything extra that you need beyond that should be your carbohydrate intake. Okay? If you can have 125 or 130, 150 grams of carbs with that protein and fat and still lose weight, then that's a great scenario because now you're giving your body everything that it wants.
That's going to do it for this episode of Fast Dave. One more day. We haven't got any questions. So I'm wearing the Species hoodie. This is a vintage Species hoodie. We're getting questions. When is Species Nutrition going to drop some new apparel? We have the men's t-shirts on the website, but they want to know, when is the new line of apparel coming out?
I don't know. That's a good question. We just got the new logo t-shirts back on the site in all sizes, so you guys can definitely be wearing those. And they're really soft fit. They're very comfortable. I really made them for myself because I needed more t-shirts to wear. So that's something you can pick up right now. It's the problem with sweatshirts is that you got to have a million sizes and you got to have men's and women's, and we're not a clothing company. We're a nutrition company. But you never know. I might come out with, if something pops up that I really like for myself, I might put it out for the general public to wear. Especially since the winter's coming, maybe we'll think about something. I haven't decided. Right now I'm working on getting Amino Evolved out, which is our fermented amino acid, essential amino acid product. It's super high in branched chain aminos. It tastes delicious. I can't wait till it comes out. It should be here in the next week or two. Mac oil will be back in stock by next week. We just got a big, huge load of it in from South Africa. It's sitting in the port in New Jersey. We're just having it shipped to our warehouse, trucked over to our warehouse. So that's super exciting. Testolize, guys. I know you guys have been torturing me when that's going to be back in. That will also be back in within another week or two. And without a doubt, it's almost finished. I had to switch manufacturers because the other manufacturer couldn't get the ingredients I wanted. I couldn't source them, so I fired them basically, and I hired another manufacturer. That'll be back in. So a lot of good stuff coming back in stock with Species, and of course, the normal litany of products are still available. And I think a lot of you guys might have missed. We had a 25% off sale on the Species site, the entire site, for Labor Day. Hopefully, you guys benefited from that. We're always running, different specials, so just keep your eyes open to the RxMuscle site. Also, I just want to remind people, I think we're at 88,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. I'd like by the end of the Olympia weekend to be at 90, and then by the end of the year to hit 100,000 subscribers. So if you guys love the content and you watch on a regular basis and you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. If you got friends, family maybe who could subscribe also, because I want to see that 90,000 before the end of the Olympia weekend. We've been working really hard to bring you the best pre-Olympia coverage of anyone else out there. If you guys have any recommendations or anything you want to suggest, feel free to put them in the comments below.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Special thanks to Johnny Styles, our excellent producer, and of course, Dave Palumbo. We'll see you next.